And I guess we should start off with Dark. What do you have for us?
Oh baby, I have something that isn't from this season. But yeah, as stated before, I have Shangri-La Frontier.
I think I
Um
actually wrote this one off, if I remember correctly,
I
during the
think
preview
most of
for the
us did.
last
I
season.
did too. Like
Yeah.
previews during fall, like I was just kind of like from the
Eh.
premise
Yeah, we were
and
all just
the
eh.
yeah, the premise and the title card, I was just like I don't fucking care. Because it looked like, it looked like here's an isekai, here's like some bullshit power fantasy, like VR MMO thing that had like a premise that they're gonna drop and it's gonna be useless and there's gonna be a harem or something. Um, and this is none of
Although
that.
apparently,
this
apparently
this
the
is none of that.
apparently the novel, the Naruto novel, or that got adapted into the manga. And usually, these manga are made for promotional purposes of for the light novel and later the anime, right? So they're not as like big, and they usually get like X after X number of chapters. Apparently, this manga adaptation won the fucking 47th Kodansha Manga Award in the shonen category in
I am
2023.
uh I am not that surprised because apparently the art of that is amazing.
Hmm.
And the spoiler alert, the audio visuals here are equally very good. But the sort of like flow, I could see also really working with like the comedic bits.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, this is a VR MMO series. This is about a high school student named Rakuro Hizutome, and he has a particular hobby of playing poorly made games. They're either
Hmm.
unbalanced, broken, or filled with so many bugs that make them borderline unplayable. The few who share his hobby might recognize him as his in-game name, Sunraku. For his next game, however, he has recommended Shangri-La Frontier, which is a popular and well-received virtual reality game. And so he decides to take it on as a breather, and he basically says to himself, like, do I want to play, like, maybe I should try and play a so-called kami game instead of all these kusages all the time. And so, since he's a pro gamer, when he boots up the game, he sells off all of his starting gear, and he just has a pair of boxers and a bird mask and some weapons. And so, he basically grinds up like this whole like dex build. And so this series kind of drops you off in the sort of like, he's like a noob. He's got no gear, and he like grinds this like starting mob with like cool knives for a while. And that kind of leads
Hmm.
him down a road of like, unlocking like a secret quest and being sort of on his own journey. He along the way, he picks up some friends. And they're all players from like other games. There is Arthur Pencilgon, um, which is this like PKer. And she winds up joining forces for him. I won't spoil any of that sort of like plot points. His friend from the other Kusoges, as well as like being a pro gamer, Oikatsu winds up joining up. And yeah, all the time it's this like VR MMO that has, like fully featured, like AI NPCs. Um, and yeah, there's also like a
So
subplot of
what's
this
the
other
what's the
girl who likes him in real life that's like trying to
yeah,
make
okay,
friends
okay.
with him, who's like the called the attack master. She's the paladin, like the big paladin in the back here. And
Hmm.
it does the bit of like her being very meek and shy while being like the huge paladin, an attack master, like one of the strongest players in the game, like sort of thing. Um,
Can I
and
ask what's the
yeah,
balance between the VR MMO part of of the series of the story, I guess, and the real life portion of it?
it is
What's the
probably
balance?
like 90% VR MMO. It pretty much is like
Okay.
just has a touch more real life stuff than like Bofuri. And Bofuri has like barely any real life shit. Um, so yeah,
What's the
there's
main
like
purpose of having those real life portions? Is it like just slapstick comedy, or is it
it's
just like
them
progression of the
talk.
rom com, or what is it?
No, like there is some like progression of like the rom com where like the girl who is like into him, Saiger Zero. I forget her real. I
Mm,
think her real name is like Saiga. Um,
mm,
and like her whole thing is like she goes to like the gaming uh their game shop and is like friends with the like the employee there, and like she's like kind of like rooting for her and like giving her advice and shit. So there's like
mhm.
those bits. There's the main character like Hizutome like interacting with his family, like his younger sister, his mom, and his dad, who's like, I forget what he does for work, but he's also like really into fishing. And it kind of like goes through their hobbies a little bit. Like the mom is a for work is a what are they called? Entomologist or whatever? Is that what it is that studies bugs? Like insects or something?
I
Or
know what
just
you're talking about, but it's not. Etymology is like the study of words, right? Or
Oh, is that the study word? Wait, which is the one for insects? There is a whatever. She's like an insect
entomology,
researcher. Yeah,
entomology. Sorry,
entomology.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, she's like these insects are like she keeps like big beetles in like cages in the house and stuff like that.
nice.
Yeah, there's like, so it's a little bit of banter of that. It's really minor. Like some of it is him checking forums. And this is a minor spoiler. But also parts of it is literally the game company dealing with them interacting in the world.
What do you mean?
Because this is a series that kind of baits you at first and like shows like when he encounters like a rare spawn. So to set this up, like there are rare spawns in the world that are
Hmm.
one-time spawns and they're extremely strong, and if you kill them, what they find out is that like they progress the world story. And when as you're figuring all of this out, you're like kind of questioning yourself, like, oh shit, like is this like a real thing? Because you see like a dark room with a computer in it, and it's like the world story bar like ticks up 1%, and you're like, whoa, like what's the mystery here? And it's revealed to you that it isn't. It is just straight up like a normal game company trying to deal with the fact that there are players like progressing their world story in a manner that they weren't expecting.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And there are some bits with that, which I think is very nice. And I guess that is a stepping point with like plot wise for this series. I really enjoy the fact that it is very much in the same way. I would say superior to Beaufort in a lot of ways. But as far as like the sort of stakes go, these stakes are permadeath NPCs that you can like kind of grow attached to because they essentially like they're full AI, like they may as well be
Yeah,
people
like
like
D&D
characters.
kind of business. Yeah.
Yeah, so like they can permanently die, um and just enjoying the story, like being an MMO gamer. Like it doesn't need to. I very much like that this series was like, we don't need to do more to justify these characters being very emotionally invested in this experience and taking this
Yeah,
extremely
I think
seriously at
the
times,
thing you're trying to
because
get
like
at
it's a
is that
game and
yeah,
like that's why
yeah,
you're playing the game. It's like, there are
yeah, yeah, yeah.
games
It's
that
not like
have,
Sword Art Online kind of shit. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you don't need to do like, oh, if you die in the game you die in real life. It's like, no, like if this NPC dies, like you wanted to see where their story goes, right? Like you want to
Yeah, yeah,
live
yeah,
out this
exactly.
story.
Yeah.
um
Is
and
there
I
any
thought that
sort
that
of
was
like
sick.
human versus AI kind of undercurrent theme kind of being laid out, or no?
No, no, absolutely not. There is no like, are
Okay,
these
okay.
people or anything like that is not
Yeah.
present at all. It is
What is
literally just
true
like,
sentience? Yeah.
yeah, it's just the characters interact with the NPCs
Okay, good. Good, 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 good.
and they really enjoy it, and that's it. And they
Yeah.
suspend their disbelief and basically role play because like they're like, yeah, like we can get into this obviously.
Yeah.
Um and so that's been fantastic because it's like you don't need more than that.
Yeah.
As far as
And I
the
think also
power,
this is like a sort of soul life in a sense, but without having the chapters upon chapters of farming, right? Where
Yep.
because you know
There is a
that's not
lot of
always going
slow
to
life
work out.
moments in
Yeah,
this. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of slow life moments in this. There's a lot of like talking to the NPCs, like figuring out their story,
hmm
sort of like living out in the world. There's a lot of like, checking in on some minor characters as like bits. There's like some level grinding parts. There's certain things of establishing the MMO systems of like crafting and all that stuff. But I think it's done like way better than most series do it because it's way more grounded. It's not like, oh, you like gathered up these materials, so now you like plus one your thing, or you fought this thing for like 30 minutes, so now you got this like like it's not like Beauforty where all of a sudden she has like these OP skills that like kill everything, right? Because that's not the
right,
point
right,
of the
right.
series. Like he is a much more he's a strong character, like he's a strong player. Um but like he still gets killed. There are still bits where he does straight up death runs to just get loot.
hmm
Um or to like try different tactics. Um and yeah, like there are certain tense moments where he's like fighting a boss and he's like, damn, I don't want to die. And it's like, why doesn't he want to die? Because he's like, I want to one try this. Like, I want to one pull this. I don't want to, like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to retry. Um, and yeah, I think just having that balance is great. Like, he has very normal skills. Like, they're setting up for some really powerful stuff now.
hmm
After season one, but I don't think it'll ever get like as nearly out of hand as a lot of those series get. Where
Right.
he just becomes an unkillable god. As far as like
I
we've
know. I
seen, like not a single
yeah.
character or player in this show is like actually unkillable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that brings me to another couple of questions I had, which is one was I know Toast reviewed a series 1 or 2 seasons ago that had was an isekai, but or it was of similar setup, like VR MMO kind of setup. Oh no, it was Toaru Osan, right? Toaru Osan no like
Oh yeah,
MMORPG
yeah, like the
adventure or
yeah,
whatever it
yeah, yeah.
was, right? And then he was talking about how it had like patches, right? And patches were part of like the storyline. Does this game have like or not game, what am I saying? This series have episodes or
Um,
chapters where they're literally like looking at patches.
kind of. There are certain points where they have to check patch notes to see how things changed.
No.
There are
Okay,
moments where
okay.
they use like skill patches to their advantage. In certain interesting ways. There's they do talk about it as far as like, there's a certain thing of like PKers where they keep talking about how like, early on in the game, like play like PKers pretty much could do whatever they want with like no
Mhm,
repercussion. But then what happened was they put in a thing where it's like I think there are safe zones, but it's also like way harder to kill PKer or no, it's way harder for them to like kill in the city because they'll get overwhelmed. And if you're a PKer, you get a debuff where you will literally like if someone kills you, they can take all of your loot. Um,
okay. So it's like RuneScape Iron Man kind of business.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like a lot of that stuff is obviously done before, but I feel like this series kind of really goes above and beyond to like not make it like seem really contrived and like really bullshit. Like I feel like a lot of these
What do you
series
mean by
fall into
that?
I feel like a lot of these series fall into the trap where it tries to be like, oh, we're like hinging on reality like so much that like this game would actually be horrifically annoying to play. Like I do think that the actual game mechanics that they introduce here are very stable, very normal, and very like reasonable as like yeah I would play something like this, whereas I
Oh,
feel like a
so
lot of
you're kind of
VR
saying that
mmos
yeah, okay, okay, okay,
are
okay,
like
okay. I
if you
see where
die
you're
you
going.
lose all your stuff, or like like if this happens like you lose everything, and it's like these odds that are like sound so shit that you would never want to fucking play it.
Yeah, like if you die, your account gets deleted. It's like
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the
I'm not gonna
only
play that game.
aspect the only aspect that's the only aspect that's ever happened is very early on. Sunraku gets killed by one of the rare spawns. He's like one of the only players to encounter this dark wolf Lycagon.
Mhm.
Um, And you can see in like the title images and stuff, he has scars on his torso and on his legs. And that debuffs him where he can no longer equip armor on his chest or his legs.
Hmm.
And but what it does is, I forget how it buffs him. It buffs him in some way, and it also makes anything weaker than him in level flee from him. And
Yeah.
like, he has the reaction of like, this sounds like some Kusoge mechanic. Like, what the fuck? Where it's like
Yeah.
it tells him like the only way to get rid of this is to kill Lycagon now. And he's like, well, I obviously cannot do that. um
I think a very interesting difference that I'm sensing between how this author created Shangri-La Frontier, or like how they view it, versus how most isekai stuff with status windows or dungeon crawling or VRMOs and numbers and all this stuff, right? Is almost like, how that comparison that was made once about The Boys and like Homelander versus Omni-Man and Invincible, right? Where it's like one was written by a superhero person who like a nerd who loves superhero stuff, and one was written by a superhero nerd kind of like a writer who hates superhero, um, like the standard superhero kind of stuff. And it's kind of similar in that most writers right now with the status windows and the dungeon crawling and the wow, you leveled up and then I get more cheat status, all that stuff
Yeah.
is very, it's supposed to, at the end of the day, be full on power fantasy layered on top of a Tolkien high fantasy. But the reason why there are status windows, the reason why there are numbers, is because and the author also knows partly his audience, just wants to see number go up and wants to see that discretization happening within the storyline, even not just in a game somewhere, but they get this perverse pleasure in a sense of seeing in a chapter, hey, this guy got XYZ abilities and leveled up to this much, and that was because due to his growth cheat. They want an easier way to discretize the thing, and it works for the audience because number go up, and it works for the author because it's an easy way to pace out the storyline and the progression, right? But I think this Shangri-La Frontier setup is quite different, where the because the focus is so much on how the game works, the numbers, the mechanics, and everything that's being talked about is based around making the game work
yeah,
in terms of a story setting.
and it's like you can tell with this, like, this is a person who has played both like an MMO, obviously like a
Hmm.
good MMO, and like a lot of really good games that offer like really good progression, where it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Sunraku or like everyone like in the party will be stacking, like, he'll use buffs in coordination, and they'll stack items, and they'll be like, okay, these work off of each other, and like, damn, this thing is like multiplicative now with like
Yeah,
this stat,
yeah.
so this is even better. And I'm trying to think of a game I had played recently where I was doing that, where it was like, oh, I got this gear piece and this gear piece, and now I'm just busted because they're working in like coordination with each other. That like, this
Mhm.
is wild. Like, this build is insane. Maybe it'll come to me later. Like, there was a specific game.
It's like Diablo shit
Um,
or something.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
similar.
Diablo
It's
PoE
similar to
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Diablo. Yeah, and it's a lot of like, but that type of progression is very nice. There's like skills, there's skill progression, obviously, like him unlocking more skills. The level progression doesn't matter as much. That's more so of like locking him out of using certain things for the time being. Um, and yeah, like as far as the game goes, very very good telling of it. Um, and
Mhm.
just feels very natural.
So what would you
Okay.
say? I want to kind of go back into just one or two more questions about kind of how the story is balanced out before we go on to other aspects of the anime. But w- we talked about the real life versus MMO balance before. Within the MMO part, which is again, as you said, 90% of it, what is sort of the is this first of all, is this episodic? Is this mini arc or what is it?
It is mini arc and large and very long and like long arc type
Okay,
stuff.
okay, 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 okay.
Like the
Um,
almost the
okay.
entirety of the second half of season 1 is like its own arc.
Okay, 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 okay. So that being said, what is the general balance, if there is even is a balance between um is it just Sunraku kind of going around and finding out more about the world, or is there like a heavy balance of like other characters coming in, cast members coming in, and them revealing their origin story and their motivations for why they're staying in the game, blah blah blah, and then like there are some or there's some significant part of people getting really friendly with the NPCs and finding out, well, what is sort of the balance in these like
Um
setting up the
it
characters and doing all that
I
stuff?
I struggle to give you a percentage. The only thing I could
Mhm.
say is like borderline perfect. Like
No, okay.
borderline perfectly. Um it is obviously primarily focused on Sunraku. And it kind of opens with him sort of traveling to like, skipping the first town and kind of moving, like trying to get to like the third town, like as his like first town or like the second town, stuff like that. You have many things like that. He very quickly encounters the bunny NPC, um, Emu, Emu, um,
Yeah,
like
Emil. Yeah,
yeah,
Emil. Yeah, really.
yeah. Like he encounters her like very very early on, um, and she's kind of like pretty much like the main support, like the main supporting character, the main mascot character. And she's very very fun. Voiced by Hidakarina. And just a very very fun like bubbly character that they banter on and off of very like very naturally and very well.
Mm.
As far as the rest of the characters go, there is a lot dedicated to them. Right. There is Siger Zero, who has not like too much. Like she is there. She has some parts. I would say the main winds up starting to be like Arthur and Oikatsu. And as far as like balancing their backstories as well, their backstories are very much like dropped in almost like background ways. Very like not like subtle lines, but it's not like, oh, now let's cut to this person's real life. It focuses only on, and I'll just call him Sunraku, like his real life. And then like I think
Mm.
the
Mm.
only other person we've seen so far is Oikatsu in real life. And I guess the hint is Oikatsu is a like pro gamer, but the
Okay.
sort of environment makes it seem like he might also be which also, yeah, he is a guy playing a female character, and is voiced by
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Makoto Koichi, and it's very very
Nice.
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 Um,
Wait, what about the female character? Is that also voiced by a male voice or?
it's voiced by Makoto Koichi. That
Oh,
like
okay.
both
Okay.
are
It's like a
voiced by her
tomboyish
doing like
voice.
a
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
tomboyish voice, yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay. Nice.
so,
Nice. Nice.
his backstory seems to be that he may be paralyzed. Um, but the only way
Okay.
they like tell you that is in the scene where he is out of the game for a little bit. He
Mm.
is still at a computer, does not stand up, and is in a chair, like in a big like chair that has
Oh.
the
Okay.
gaming
Okay.
set like on it,
Like
but
a
also
Stephen
has like
Hawking kind of
wheels.
like setup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so like he can obviously like, he can move and stuff, but it does not. But it seems like he may be like paralyzed from the waist down or something.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
Arthur's character, she voiced by Yoko Hikasa.
Nice.
She the way her backstory is introduced is through like one mini part where Sunraku is eating breakfast with the rest of his family, and his sister is a
Oh.
big like fashionista. But his
Uh-huh.
sister is like, "Oh, I really like this model," and they show this like famous model, and it
Mhm.
looks exactly like Arthur's character.
Oh, okay, okay, okay,
And
okay,
like
okay,
yeah,
okay.
and Sunraku drops a line like, "Hey, like you should probably like give her privacy." And so it's making it very clear that he knows that that is her. And
Right,
that's the
right, right.
only aspect we get of that in season 1 for like her
Okay.
real life. And that
Okay.
actually feeds into her character arc too. So like that's the
Mhm.
other thing too that I would like gush about this like completely with this series is that all of this stuff is not like presented to you like you're a like fucking idiot like it is in most anime. Like her backstory, like her entire like her name, I don't know why I can't think of her real name right now, but her name means what is it? It's like eternity in Japanese, I think. Right? Like what
Yeah,
is
so it was yeah, it's a second reading of AN, which is Toa. So her
yeah.
Toa, yeah.
And so her like she gets involved with an NPC like basically like there is a much longer arc where their only motivation is Arthur wants them to help her get through this storyline that's involving an NPC. And it's
Mhm.
only because and it's dropped it's not like super subtle, but Sunraku makes like an offhand comment because the NPC's name is Setsuna. And so
Oh, okay.
he's like he drops like a line of like, okay, like I get it, like your eternity, like and moment. But the sort of like subtlety in a lot of the dialogue between them is also very much implying that like Arthur is invested in this primarily because of like just overwhelming stress in her like real life and her job.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like all of those pressures and sort of like
Right, right,
falling in love
right.
with this game and this NPC because of that. And I thought that that was like just super refreshing for a series like this to be doing things
It's
like that.
bits
Just
and
these
pieces, you mean?
subtleties like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just these
Yeah.
little like ways of telling it, like telling the story like normally,
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah,
just
yeah.
shoving
Or
it down your
actions.
throat like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
an
yeah.
absolute idiot. Like
Show not tell, right?
yeah, it's a lot of that. And this is
Yeah.
not even getting into like Sunraku's actual like main arc with the bunny kingdom, like getting involved with a lot of NPCs. There's Vash, who is voiced by Otsaku Akio Otsuka,
Yeah, let's go.
and he is like just a big like Yakuza bunny. Um and he's very cool. And he has a Smithy sound like song, insert song. And it's very awesome. And like a lot of these characters just are very fun. They're great. The mini arcs are really cool. The world building is very nice with the MMO. And yeah, there has just not been a moment I feel like in this show where I'm like rolling my eyes or bored. It's
Yeah.
kind of keeping the pace up a lot.
One last question I had uh with the story was what's the general like group cohesion I want to say of the cast here? Is it just they all kind of hang around? Do they all like join in a party together with Sanraku for one
So I
reason or another, or is
guess
it just them meeting the characters here and there?
so for a very long time in season 1, they're kind of like encountering each other. And
Okay.
Sunraku's kind of just following along with Emu and like her
Yeah.
and like the Rabbitsia like storyline, like with the rabbits. Because that's
Right,
supposed to be
right,
like a
right.
unique scenario that only he has found. And he doesn't even know how he unlocked the scenario. There's actually a bit later on that I will ruin where it's like, they ask him like, I want information on how you unlock this storyline. And he
Mhm.
goes, okay, here's everything I did. First, I farmed the Vorpal bunnies at level 2 and unlocked both of their daggers. Then I used those daggers to defeat in one shot to do 200 crits against
Nice.
Lycagon. And then I
Nice.
was killed by Lycagon and got this curse. And they're just looking at him. They're like fuck you. Like that was useless. Like and he was like, yeah, exactly. Like he's like I have no fucking clue what trick this.
Oh my
Um
god.
but yeah, so there's a lot of really fun stuff with that. But yes, they do eventually like form a small group. Tiger Zero is not included in that. Tiger Zero is actually in a different guild. She is in, I forget what their name is, but there are like 5 major guilds. There's like the PKer guild, there's Siger's guild, which are like these like protectors. Um and then there's like, there's a even like a pets guild that hasn't really played a super important role yet. Uh, But overall, like it's very nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
definitely
right.
well paced
Well,
out. I would say the only other things of note is this has god tier audio visuals. It has a very nice soundtrack. Its
who
directing is
is
very good.
what's the studio again
This is
for Shangri-La
C2C
Frontier?
Studio. This is C2C Studio,
C2C. Wow.
which
Okay.
has not really done like their visuals have never been
They've done
bad,
a lot of
but
like smaller stuff, right? I think.
yeah,
Oh
they've done
wait,
like
no. Okay,
they've
I
done
think the
Majin no
biggest
Tabi
stuff they've
Tabi.
done, yeah, they did Hitori Bochi, they did Majin no Tabi Tabi. They probably got some money from Tsukimichi. Um, Pride of Orange was kind of whatever. Reincarnated Sword. Oh, so done a lot of. They've
Yeah,
been
they've
kind
done
of
a
grinding
lot.
out their Isekai stuff series.
Yeah,
Basically. Yeah.
they've done a lot, but this is like as far as audio visuals go, like this is a cut
Hmm.
above a lot of things. Like this is some very
Yeah,
nice action.
yeah,
This is some
yeah,
very very good as well. And yeah, I I would say like the sort of comedic cuts are really 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 fun with the bird mask and how that's drawn a lot of times.
yeah.
Um yeah, and him playing off of the furry characters and that comedic timing is very good.
Mhm.
And yeah, this yeah, as to note, this is the director as well of the I don't know if it's all is it all the Berserk movies? Yeah, it looks like this is all the Berserk movies. This is the director of Majin no Tabi Tabi. Well, the Berserk 2012 movies. Um and
Yeah, Kazuma Hayasaka, right? I think.
yeah, and so like this has been I mean, I this is definitely this is just a really good yeah, I don't really even know what else to say. Like this is a
Yeah, it's
really
interesting
good
because
ass like
he
series.
because Hayasaka has been in with C2C for quite a while. Again, as you said, starting from Majin no Tabi Tabi, but he's been a mainline director of for C2C even through some of their more quieter spots, right? Something like Pride of Orange, Handyman Saito, stuff like that. Obviously, those are not series that you'd be like, wow, the best most prominent series of the season or whatever. But this one, obviously, he did deliver alongside Yamada Ryosuke. I think he helped direct slash produce there. He's been Ryosuke Yamada has been pretty much in with C2C since the beginning. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a really good showing. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I can't really gush enough about this. If I had given this a shot, this definitely would have made my 2023 list for sure. Like this absolutely would have made something a lot of things on my 2023 list. I would recommend
Nice.
anyone check this out who I mean, I would recommend pretty much anyone check this out in general. But
Mhm.
I would especially recommend anyone who enjoys something like Bofity. Like if you enjoyed Bofity at all in even like any extent, you will most likely love this series.
Nice.
Because this is very much in a very similar vein, but far more grounded. far shinier, and with a
Right,
very
right,
fun
right, right.
premise and like even more world building and like natural feeling. So
Hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dark, for helping to, cover, I guess, last bits of the last season, and obviously a much needed one since, again, we did write it off back then. But I'm glad you did help cover this one. So
yeah,
it
look forward
is,
to season 2 in the fall or summer of this year.
yeah, 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 yeah. October 2024, hopefully without delays. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't even
So
mention
that,
I'm an idiot. I need to tack on this too. The whole like Kusage thing does kind of come into play. They do switch games at certain points to play, and the sort of like color
uh,
palette and style and characters like all change. And
that's
those
really
are
good,
also done
actually.
really well. Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah,
Yeah, and that apparently keeps up in this series. Like there's a mecha game that they try at some point, so like
yeah, I'm surprised that the
it's very,
studio
very good.
would be like, yeah, let's like actually try to implement all of that and like properly have all the styles and everything changed. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not like the most extreme style change, but it is like the color palette changes, obviously all the character designs change. And so
Hmm.
it's like
Yeah,
very, very impressive what they've managed to do.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, this is Shangri-La Frontier, originally a Naroke, I guess not isekai, but a VR MMO, kind of isekai variant-ish. Um, and getting into it, obviously very unique, one of its kind. Started out again on Shosetsuka ni Naro, became a manga adaptation that apparently won Kodansha Manga Award, and now it is an anime adaptation by C2C with the second season slated for October 2024. So please do check it out if you want to kind of see a little bit more of an uncommon VRMO Isekai kind of variant here. So thank you very much, Dark.
Oh
And
yeah,
we're gonna move.
my mall rating would be
Yeah,
a 9.
nice, nice, nice.